There was a time when lowering the top of a car didn't mean sacrificing speed. In the 1960s, Detroit was living through one of the wildest periods in its entire history. Automakers were fiercely competing to build engines that were bigger, more powerful, and more intimidating than ever before. And while many of those engines ended up in closed-roof muscle cars, some engineers decided to do something even more interesting. They installed them in convertibles. But the most fascinating part is that many of these cars didn't look especially fast at first glance. Some looked like elegant luxury cars, others looked like simple family convertibles, and a few were absolute beasts in disguise. Today we're going to explore some of the fastest American convertibles of the 1960s. From legendary big blocks to rare combinations of luxury and power, these cars proved that in the 1960s, speed wasn't reserved only for closed-roof coupes. So, get ready, because the first car on this list isn't just fast. It's one of the most brutal convertibles Detroit produced during the entire decade. Let's begin. 1967, Chevrolet Corvette 427. If we're talking about truly fast convertibles in the 1960s, one name immediately enters the conversation: Corvette. But when that Corvette carried the 427 big block engine, things became much more serious. By the middle of the decade, Chevrolet had already turned the Corvette into America's great sports car. It represented the wildest side of Detroit, a machine designed not only to look fast, but to dominate the road. Visually, this generation already communicated speed, even when standing completely still. The low body, extremely long hood, and sharp lines created a silhouette that looked built to slice through the air at high speed. But in convertible form, the experience became even more intense. Because here, you weren't just driving a fast sports car, you were hearing every explosion of the engine directly under the open sky. Under the hood sat the massive 427 cubic inch big block V8, one of the most legendary engines of the entire muscle car era. Depending on the configuration, it could produce up to 435 gross horsepower. By the late 1960s, that figure placed the Corvette among the fastest cars a buyer could purchase in the United States. In fact, some tests from the period recorded 0 to 60 miles per hour acceleration in under 5.5 seconds, numbers that are still respectable even today. And in a convertible, the sensation was even more dramatic, the wind hammering the cabin, the roar of the V8 echoing without any insulation, and the car pushing forward with a force that very few convertibles could offer at the time. It was fast, very fast. In terms of production, Chevrolet built thousands of Corvette convertibles in 1967, but the versions equipped with the 427 big block were always the most desired by enthusiasts. Today, that status remains completely intact. A well-preserved 1967 Corvette 427 convertible typically ranges between $120,000 and $250,000, with exceptional examples far exceeding that range at auctions. It wasn't just an elegant convertible, it was a true muscle car, without a roof. 1966 Oldsmobile 442. And this is where the story takes an interesting turn, because the next car on this list wasn't designed as an exotic sports car like the Corvette. It also wasn't created as a radical engineering experiment. In fact, it was born from a much simpler idea, but one that was just as dangerous. Take a relatively elegant car and turn it into a true muscle car. The Oldsmobile 442. By the mid-1960s, Oldsmobile was mostly known for building refined, comfortable, and quite respectable automobiles. It wasn't the brand most people immediately associated with wild performance, but the 442 changed that perception. Visually, the car maintained fairly clean and balanced lines. The long hood, solid body, and confident stance on the pavement gave it character, but without the exaggerated aggression that some muscle cars would adopt later. It looked like an elegant convertible, until you looked under the hood. In 1966, it came equipped with a powerful 400 cubic inch V8, producing around 350 gross horsepower. It was a large engine with plenty of torque, pushing this convertible forward with far more force than its appearance suggested. In tests of the time, it could accelerate from 0 to 62 miles per hour in roughly 7 seconds. A very serious figure for an open-top car in the mid-1960s. But what made the 442 especially interesting wasn't just its power, it was its balance. While many muscle cars were becoming increasingly aggressive and extreme, Oldsmobile offered something different: strong performance combined with a level of refinement that many buyers appreciated. You could enjoy the open road without completely sacrificing comfort, and that combination proved to be quite popular. In 1966, Oldsmobile produced more than 3,000 units of the 442 convertible, which today makes it one of the most interesting and relatively rare muscle convertibles of the decade. Today, a well-preserved example typically ranges between $60,000 and $120,000, with exceptional cars exceeding that range in the collector market. It wasn't the most extreme convertible of the decade, but it was one of the most balanced. 1966 Ford Mustang GT. Now, we arrive at one of the most important names in all of American automotive history: Mustang. When Ford launched it in 1964, no one imagined how quickly this car would conquer the market. In a very short time, it became one of the most recognizable automobiles of the entire decade, a symbol of freedom, youth, and the open road. But while many versions of the Mustang were designed to be affordable and fun, some configurations hid much more character under the hood. Visually, the car kept the classic proportions that made the Mustang famous from the beginning. The long hood, short rear deck, and sporty stance created a balanced silhouette that worked perfectly in convertible form. With the top down, the Mustang looked exactly like what Ford wanted it to represent: a car built to enjoy the road. But in GT form, it could also move very quickly. Under the hood sat the well-known 289 Hi-Po Vasiu 8, one of the most respected versions of Ford's small block engine. This engine produced around 271 gross horsepower, delivering a lively response for a car of this size. Some tests from the time recorded 0 to 62 miles per hour acceleration in around 7 seconds. Figures that place the Mustang GT among the fastest convertibles available to the public during the decade. But the Mustang's real secret wasn't just its speed, it was its balance between performance, style, and accessibility. Unlike some of the more exclusive cars on this list, the Mustang was produced in enormous numbers. In 1966, Ford built more than 72,000 Mustang convertibles, although only a portion of them were well-equipped GT versions. Today, that legacy is still very much alive. A well-preserved example typically ranges between $55,000 and $100,000, depending on condition and originality. And now I want to hear your opinion. Among the first 3 cars we've seen today, the brutal Corvette 427, the balanced Oldsmobile 442, or the iconic Mustang GT, which one would you choose to drop the top and hit the road? Let me know in the comments, because the next car on this list proves that even a seemingly elegant automobile could hide one of the most feared engines of the entire decade. 1963 Chevrolet Impala SS. Now, we arrive at a car that proves something very interesting about the 1960s, because some of the fastest automobiles of the decade didn't always look like sports cars. In fact, many of them looked like simple, large, elegant cars, perfectly suited for taking the family out on a Sunday drive. And few examples represent that idea better than the Impala SS with the 409 engine. At the beginning of the 1960s, the Impala was already one of the most popular cars in the United States. It was big, comfortable, and extremely common on American roads. But when the Supersport version appeared, the character of the car changed completely. Visually, it was still a large American convertible, long lines, a wide body, and an elegant presence that fit perfectly within the styling of the era. But beneath that calm appearance could hide something much more serious: the famous 409 cubic inch V8. This engine quickly became a legend in the world of American performance. In its most powerful configurations, it could produce up to 425 gross horsepower, an astonishing number for the early 1960s. And when that engine pushed a large convertible like the Impala, the result was something quite unexpected. In period tests, the Impala 409 could accelerate from 0 to 62 miles per hour in about 6.5 seconds, extremely quick for such a large and heavy automobile. In essence, it was a true sleeper, a car that looked elegant and relaxed, but could surprise many sports cars the moment the driver pressed the accelerator, and that dual personality became part of its charm. Today, a well-preserved 1963 Chevrolet Impala SS 409 Convertible typically ranges between $80,000 and $150,000, with exceptional examples reaching even higher figures at auctions. It was big, it was elegant, but it could also be surprisingly fast. 1964 Lincoln Continental. Now, the tone of the list changes completely, because the next car was not designed to look fast. It wasn't created to compete with muscle cars or to impress people with violent acceleration. It was built for something very different: prestige. For many people, this is one of the most elegant luxury automobiles ever produced in the United States. In the early 1960s, Lincoln decided to move away from the excessive styling of the previous decade and instead pursue something far more sophisticated. The result was a design that is still considered a masterpiece today. The body was long, clean, and extremely well balanced. The famous rear suicide doors, the perfectly straight roofline, and the monumental proportions created an automobile that projected authority from every angle. And in convertible form, that presence became even more impressive, because the Continental wasn't a typical convertible. It was an enormous, complex, and extremely refined automobile designed to deliver an experience of absolute luxury, even with the top completely down. In fact, its convertible roof system was one of the most sophisticated of the era. But beneath all that elegance, there was also plenty of power. The Continental used a 430 cubic inch V8 capable of producing around 320 gross horsepower. In period tests, it could accelerate from 0 to 62 miles per hour in about 8 seconds, a very respectable figure for a luxury automobile weighing well over 2 tons. It was a very different kind of speed. Not aggressive, not dramatic, but powerful, smooth, and completely commanding. And precisely because of its complexity and level of luxury, the Continental convertible was never produced in large numbers. Between 1961 and 1967, Lincoln built just over 3,000 convertibles per year, which today makes these models some of the most desirable classic Lincolns among collectors. Today, a well-preserved Lincoln Continental typically ranges between $70,000 and $140,000, with exceptional examples reaching even higher values. It wasn't the most aggressive convertible of the 1960s, but it was one of the cars that best proved that American luxury could also move very quickly when necessary. 1967, Pontiac GTO. Now, we return to the territory where the word convertible starts to mean something much more dangerous. Because if the Lincoln represented pure luxury, the next car on this list belongs to a completely different category: muscle car. And few names represent that idea better than the GTO. By the mid-1960s, it had already become one of the most influential cars in the entire American automotive industry. Many historians even consider it the car that officially helped start the muscle car era. The formula was simple, but incredibly effective. Take a relatively compact car, install a massive engine under the hood, and let the result speak for itself. Visually, it had exactly the presence you would expect from a classic muscle machine. The long hood, muscular lines, and aggressive stance on the pavement created a silhouette that suggested performance even before the key was turned. But once the engine came to life, the reputation was fully justified. Under the hood sat the powerful 400 cubic inch V8, which in its most potent configurations could produce around 360 gross horsepower. Some tests from the period recorded 0 to 62 miles per hour acceleration in about 6.5 seconds, placing the GTO among the fastest convertibles available to the public in the 1960s. It was real power, but it was also style. With the top down and the roar of the V8 accompanying every acceleration, the GTO perfectly represented that combination of freedom and performance that defined the entire decade. In terms of production, Pontiac built more than 9,000 GTO convertibles in 1967, a relatively high number for a high-performance open-top muscle car. Today, that historic status keeps the model highly valued in the classic car market. A well-preserved example typically ranges between $80,000 and $150,000, with especially original cars reaching even higher figures. And now I want to hear your opinion. Among the last three cars we've seen, the massive Impala 409 Convertible, the elegant Lincoln Continental Convertible, or the brutal Pontiac GTO Convertible, which one would you choose to drop the top and hit the road? Let me know in the comments, because what comes next takes us to one of the rarest and wildest convertibles Detroit produced during the entire decade. 1969, Dodge Coronet RT. Now, we arrive at one of the most unusual moments in this entire list. Because during the 1960s, combining a HEMI engine with a convertible was not common. In fact, almost no manufacturer was willing to install one of Detroit's most savage engines in an open-top body. But Dodge decided to do it. The Coronet was already a serious muscle car even in its standard configuration. Most buyers chose the powerful 440 Magnum Phi 8, a massive engine with brutal torque delivery. But for customers who wanted something completely different, there was an even more radical option, the legendary 426 HEMI. This engine was essentially a racing machine adapted for the street. With hemispherical combustion chambers and extremely robust internal components, the HEMI was officially rated at 425 horsepower, but many experts believe the real output was considerably higher. Installing that engine in a convertible created something almost absurd for the time, an open-top muscle car with enough power to compete with some of the fastest cars of the entire decade. Naturally, very few buyers dared to order this combination. Current estimates suggest that only one or two Coronet convertibles were equipped with the 426 HEMI in 1969, making it one of the rarest muscle convertibles ever built. Today, that level of rarity has pushed it to another level in the collector market. An authentic HEMI Coronet convertible can easily exceed $2 million at auction, making it one of the most valuable Mopar machines of the entire muscle car era. And seeing it with the top down, letting that massive HEMI breathe freely, is a reminder of a time when Detroit was still willing to build things that were completely irrational. 1968, Shelby GT500. The list raises the intensity once again, because the next car is not simply a fast Mustang, it's a Mustang taken to an entirely different level, Shelby. By the late 1960s, the name Carroll Shelby had already become legendary in the world of American performance. His cars were not only faster than standard Mustangs, they also had a much more aggressive personality, clearly focused on high performance. Visually, the car was impossible to ignore. The body kept the classic Mustang silhouette of the era, available in both fastback and convertible form. But Shelby added a series of elements that completely transformed its presence. The hood with functional air scoops, the darkened grille, the auxiliary lights, and the distinctive Shelby details gave it a far more serious appearance than a conventional Mustang. It looked more muscular, more aggressive, and clearly faster. But the real star was under the hood, the 428 Cobra Jet V8, one of the most respected engines of the entire muscle car era. Officially rated at around 335 gross horsepower, many enthusiasts have always believed the real output was considerably higher, and when that engine pushed a relatively light convertible like the GT500, the result was impressive. In period tests, it could accelerate from 0 to 62 miles per hour in roughly 6 seconds, an extremely quick figure for an open-top car in the late 1960s. It was a car that combined something quite special, the open-air experience of a convertible, with the brutal character of a true muscle car. But as with many Shelbys of this era, production numbers were never very large. In 1968, just over 400 Shelby GT500 convertibles were built, which today makes it one of the most desirable classic Mustangs among collectors. Today, a well-preserved example typically ranges between $250,000 and $500,000, depending on condition and originality. It wasn't just a Mustang with more power. It was one of the most extreme interpretations of the American convertible in the entire decade. 1965. Pontiac Catalina 2+2. Now, the list takes another very interesting turn. Because while the Shelby represented the most aggressive side of American performance, the next car proved something Detroit knew how to do very well during the 1960s: build enormous automobiles. That could still be surprisingly fast. The Catalina is one of the best examples of that philosophy. At first glance, the car looked like a typical large luxury convertible of the era. The body was long, wide, and elegant, with proportions clearly designed to offer comfort and presence on the road. It didn't look like a sports car. It didn't look like a muscle car. But Pontiac had other plans. The 2+2 version was created specifically to transform this large automobile into something much more serious from a performance standpoint. And the key to everything was under the hood, the massive 421 cubic inch V8. This engine was a true beast for the mid-1960s. Depending on the configuration, it could produce up to 376 gross horsepower, delivering an enormous amount of torque for a car of this size. And when all that power pushed a large convertible like the Catalina, the result was quite unexpected. In tests from the time, it could accelerate from 0 to 62 miles per hour in roughly 6.5 seconds, placing it clearly among the fastest convertibles available during the decade. It was the kind of car that surprised a lot of people. Today, a well-preserved 1965 Pontiac Catalina 2+2 convertible typically ranges between $60,000 and $110,000, with especially original examples reaching higher values among collectors. 1969 Chevrolet Camaro SS. Now, we arrive at the car that closes this list, and it's hard to imagine a more fitting ending for a video about fast convertibles of the 1960s. By the end of the decade, the muscle car war was at its most intense. Every American manufacturer was trying to build cars that were more powerful, more aggressive, and faster than ever before. And within Chevrolet, the Camaro had become one of the brand's most important weapons in that battle, especially in supersport form. Visually, the 1969 Camaro is considered by many enthusiasts to be one of the most successful designs of the entire muscle car era. The low, muscular body, pronounced wheel arches, and aggressive front end created an automobile that communicated performance even before the key was turned. And in convertible form, that character became even more special, because here you had a true muscle car, but with the sky completely open above your head. But what truly defined the Camaro was under the hood. Depending on the configuration, the car could be equipped with several high-performance V8 engines, but one of the most respected was the massive 396 cubic inch big block. This engine could produce up to 375 gross horsepower, delivering strong acceleration that placed the Camaro among the fastest cars in its class. And when all that power was combined with a relatively compact body, the result was impressive. In tests from the period, the Camaro SS equipped with the 396 big block could accelerate from 0 to 62 miles per hour in about 6 seconds. Extremely quick numbers for a convertible in the late 1960s. It was the kind of car that perfectly represented the spirit of the era: powerful, aggressive, and built to be enjoyed to the fullest on the open road. Today, a well-preserved 1969 Chevrolet Camaro SS convertible typically ranges between $80,000 and $150,000, with especially rare or fully restored examples exceeding that range in the collector market. It wasn't the rarest convertible of the decade, nor the most expensive, but it was one of the cars that best combined style, power, and the open-top experience that defined great American automobiles of the 1960s. And after exploring all these cars, one thing becomes very clear. In the 1960s, convertibles were not simply elegant automobiles meant for cruising along the coast or enjoying a sunny day. Many of them hid enormous engines, impressive horsepower figures, and a character capable of rivaling some of the most serious muscle cars of the entire decade. But now, I want to hear your opinion. Of all the convertibles we saw today, which one would you choose to drop the top, hear the roar of the V8, and hit the road? The brutal Corvette 427, the legendary Shelby GT500, or perhaps the massive and surprising Catalina 2+2? Let me know in the comments, because it's always interesting to see which of these machines wins over true enthusiasts. And if you enjoyed this journey through some of the fastest convertibles of the 1960s, I recommend the video now appearing on screen. where we explore the most beautiful American convertibles of the 1950s, a decade when open-top design reached truly spectacular levels of elegance. Click the video, continue the journey through the golden age of the American automobile, and I'll see you there.